Welcome back to another podcast from Open Adventures. My name is Sriram, and today we managed to catfish a Transalp owner. It's a Sunday morning, and Supreet pretended to be a girl, calling him out on a date, and we kidnapped him here. And here I have with me Abhijitt.
Thank you, Sriram. So excited to be here today with you all, and we'll see how this conversation goes.
Thank you so much for making it, Abhijitt. So, the first and foremost question. You own a Transalp. Why a Transalp?
So it's a funny story. I had no plans of buying this bike. Right?
Okay.
I had like zero plans. So a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Pranav, he was planning to upgrade from a Duke 390.
Okay.
And he called me saying, hey, I'm going to just go check out this bike. Do you want to come along? Right. So that's how the conversation started, and we just went there. And I ended up booking the bike before him.
Okay.
So that's how it all started. So I went, sat on the bike, and I felt the connection. I was riding a TRK before this, and I really enjoyed riding the bike. And I'd done about 37,000 kilometers on it.
Okay.
And I was really happy. And I was not looking to change maybe at that point in time, right? Maybe a year or two later, I would have changed, but not that early. So in November last year, when we did this, I was like, okay.
But why the upgrade? From TRK to a Transalp?
So for me, the only downside of a TRK, though I was having fun on it, was the weight.
Okay.
So I just went, sat on the Transalp, a much bigger motorcycle in terms of the capacity.
Okay.
But when I realized it's a 750cc and it's so nimble,
okay.
I didn't even do a test ride, by the way.
You didn't even test ride?
I didn't even test ride. So test rides weren't available.
All right.
Right? Honda was doing a lot of Honda things back then. So we just got to sit on the bike, and I don't know, I felt some sort of connection with it, and I was like, Pranav, I think I may end up booking before.
So you just fell in love with the bike?
Yeah, that's how it was, right? So, and I am also a little impulsive when it comes to these decisions, and then Pranav said he's not sure, right? And but then both of us ended up booking it, and both of us have the bike right now. So we're having a lot of fun riding this motorcycle. But again, the Transalp has been like the motorcycle maybe I've been looking for a long time.
Okay.
I enjoy touring, and also whenever an off-road opportunity arises, I don't go in search of off-road, I'll be honest, but when an opportunity arises, I like sending my bike on it, and this bike has been doing it all. So
you literally been gunning this bike on off-road?
I wouldn't say gunning my bike, but yeah, I've been pushing the limits, I can say that. Right?
Okay. I want to know a little bit more about the bikes that you've owned.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you first had a Thunderbird.
Yeah.
I think we were having a conversation a couple of minutes back. You owned a Thunderbird, you owned a GS 310.
Yeah.
And you owned a TRK and a Transalp. Yeah. If I have to ask you the best amongst these four that you've owned.
So, tricky question. I kind of get attached to all my bikes, but when I'm deciding to sell them, I can detach easily as well. Right? So, for all of these bikes, Thunderbird is my first bike. Really have a fond memory of it. A good friend of mine owns it right now.
Good memories, I hope.
So, yeah, good memories for sure. Right? I sold it to a friend of mine as well.
Okay.
So I can, if I want to really see the bike again, I have that option. So that still holds a special place because of my first bike. But, I don't know if it's recency bias, but the Transalp is something which I'm really, really enjoying. Like out of all the bikes, if I do a bike that if I don't have to worry about on-road or off-road, like, I can cruise at really high speeds on the highway and I can send it off-road and without thinking twice, right? That's the most important aspect.
Absolutely.
Right? So like, I don't have to worry about it. Like, for instance, I just finished my ride in Ladakh right now.
Okay.
It's done about 10,000 odd kilometers on the bike, right?
Okay.
So called up Honda saying, hey, I know that service is at 12,000. Do you think I need to get the service done early? Like, no, just finish 12,000 and come back, trust the bike. So that's how even Honda deals with it. That's how much trust is around the reliability factor comes in, right? And as an owner, I've never felt, anything beyond that.
Okay.
Like, I've felt the bike is highly reliable as well.
Right. So I want to know a little bit more about the price and the specs of the bike.
Okay. So again, Honda being Honda, it's slightly on the higher side.
Absolutely.
Right? So the ex-showroom is about 11 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 90,000 odd. If you're getting it in Bangalore, on-road would be close to 14 lakhs.
Absolutely. That's the downside of the Karnataka registration taxes and on-road taxes.
My friend Pranav got in UP just because of that. So he's got an address in UP. He's from UP, right? Or Delhi UP / like the NCR region. So he saved close to $1.5 lakh just because he got it from there. Okay. Right? So he had a good deal. I would put it that way.
Lovely. So the specs of the bike.
So I think it's got about 91 bhp of power.
Okay.
76 Nm on torque. You'll feel every inch of it while riding it. Like it flies.
It flies.
Right. So you will have great fun just pushing it across. I don't think I've ever experienced anything as powerful as this, at least from my riding journey. Right. Like the amount of fun you can have on it is insane. So power-wise or the specification-wise, I think these two what everyone looks for in general, right? And I think it does total justice to whatever it is.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about the off-roading capability of this bike.
Okay, so while after booking this bike,
how does it handle when it's off-road?
So if you're saddling on the bike, there's no problem whatsoever. Right? The rear suspension in general is a little soft on this motorcycle.
All right.
Right. So if you're sitting on a bumpy terrain, you could be bouncing along with the bike. Right. So you would experience it.
Okay.
But if you're saddling and just opening your throttle, like you don't need to think twice. Like there is no, even if there's a rock in front of you, you can be, really confident that this will take it on. Like,
Okay.
I don't mean big boulders, but the few rocks around that, without any hesitation, you can just go through it, without thinking twice. Right?
So it takes the beating quite well.
Yeah. So after booking the bike as well, when I looked at a lot of reviews online, a lot of them are complaining about its off-road capabilities, right? And I was like, hey, wait, I was riding a TRK before this. It's a big machine. It's a much more heavier machine, right? And I was managing with that. I did Ladakh on that as well. I did Spiti on that as well, right? And when I came to this, it's a 42 kilo lighter in comparison. So for me, it's been a breeze. On a personal level, it's been a breeze for me when it comes to off-road. Right? And I don't have any issue with the ground clearance as well. A lot of them have been complaining about that aspect, considering it's got the oil sump, protruding downwards.
Absolutely.
So the bash plate is really important. It's very, very important.
Regardless of if you buy the bike stock, the one main
you need to
get the bash plate.
Yeah, there is no compromise on that.
No compromise on that.
No compromise, because one thing I realized.
Is it very exposed enough that if
it is very exposed.
It's very exposed.
It is very, very exposed. Basically, it's the Honda 750 engine, right? So if you look at the Honda 750,
you
will see it.
Yeah,
very evident. And it's the same engine.
Okay.
Right? So if you are taking this on trails or anywhere, even if it's a small rock that comes and hits it, you never know what could happen.
Absolutely,
right?
The oil filter goes for it.
I'm not saying it'll cause massive damage, but why do you want to take that risk? That's simple.
The next thing, service intervals and the service cost involved.
Okay, so again, I can confidently say out of the 310 GS, TRK and the Transalp, the Transalp is the cheapest in terms of service cost.
Give us a rough ballpark.
I'll give you a rough ballpark. So my first service is at 1,000 kilometers. It costed me $6,000.
With oil? With
oil change. Oil there is 4 liters of oil which goes into it.
Wow. Okay.
That's close to 4,000 rupees in itself.
Perfect.
Right. Then there's a labor charge. So Honda doesn't do free service on CBUs.
Okay.
So Transalp is a CBU.
Okay.
So you will not have any free. So they will charge labor.
Right.
And labor is kind of fixed on most. It's $1,800 at Honda plus GST. Right. So that's how they function.
The plus side of Honda.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So until and unless you're doing too much work and very specifically, like you need to remove some parts and get something done, they charge you an extra. But usually it's been $1,800 for whatever I've done till. Like I went to get my auxiliary ramps fixed, $1,800. Okay. So that's how much they charge in terms of labor. And then I did a general checkup, which is like, it's an optional thing, which Honda says which the service center at Bangalore says it's good to get it done just to check at 7,000 kilometers. So it's 1,000 plus 6,000. Okay. Right. And that cost me $1,800 again.
So anything that in particular you feel that during you owning this bike for quite some time, anything that wear and tear which is way too often on this particular bike?
Not thus far. My brake pads are still active.
Okay.
Right? It's 10,400 kilometers almost now. Okay. And my rear brake pads haven't been changed yet.
So they're performing quite well.
Yeah, they're performing quite well. My friends have never been changed on. The front brake pads have never been changed on any of my bikes. So in terms, they last a long time for me. The rear brake pads used to be changed around 8,000 kilometers. It's 10 on this and it's not yet changed. They're doing they're doing their job and they're lasting.
They last long.
They last long. Yeah. But at the same time, I would like to call this out as well. We were speaking about Tino. Yeah. He had to change it at 5,000, both his front and rear brake.
But why?
Maybe the style of braking, and then I spoke to him, and he tends to brake a little hard as well.
Okay.
So I think it comes down to your style of braking as well when it comes to how much the brake pads last. But he's had that experience.
5,000.
Right? Yeah, at 5,000 he had to change both. So
wow. Okay. So while you're touring, I wanted to understand how the seat is. Is it sufficient enough for long touring purposes?
For me, yes. And I'll give you again a comparison from my previous bikes. On my TRK, which was at 835 mm seat height, I couldn't flat foot.
Okay.
This is at an 850 mm.
Yeah.
And I can flat foot.
You can flat foot?
Yeah. So it's because of the design of the bike.
How comfy is the seat?
I've actually found it very comfortable because so on this bike I've done like 750 kilometers stretch in a day.
Okay.
And I was not exhausted. I didn't feel anything. Like I went out for a walk after the ride.
All right.
So that's how I'll put it as. Like again, we did this stretch from Bangalore to. We were supposed to go to Pumbara in Kodai.
Okay.
But we decided once we left Bangalore at Madiwala at 5 a.m. We reached the foothills of Kodai at 9:30, 10 a.m.
Okay.
Right. And then we have too much time on our hands. Let's go to Meghamalai.
Okay.
So very ad hoc. We went to Meghamalai, came back, went back to Pumbarai. By 6 in the evening, we were in Pumbarai, and then we were like, hey, let's take out a stroll.
All right.
And we went out on a walk. Like, both of us are on a Transalp again. It was me and Pranav who did it. So we were absolutely comfortable, no issues at all. And I personally had no issues. I've done 10,000 kilometers on it. I feel the seat is very comfortable.
You don't feel that kind of back cramping or like, break your body?
Nah.
Feels?
Never felt it till date.
Never felt it?
Never.
Brilliant. So I want to know how effective, the next question, how effective are the suspensions on different terrains, on tarmac as well as off-road?
Tarmac, bike is smooth. You will just be gliding through the roads. You will not feel anything. I mean, if you encounter a pothole or a speed breaker anywhere, you will take it on easily. No problem. Right?
No problem.
So, but on off-road, as I said earlier as well, if you're seated on your bike, the rear suspension, if it's a bumpy off-road terrain, if it's a flat off-road terrain, it's a trail which is flat, you will not have a problem again.
Okay.
Bike will sail through. But if it's bumpy, right, then the rear suspension will really annoy you a bit because it's soft.
So you're literally like a basketball bounce.
Yeah, that's how you would feel, right? But if you're saddling on the bike, man, the front suspension takes it on. Like,
what about somebody who's heavy, on the heavier end?
Yeah, so I think they'll have a bit more trouble with it, for sure.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I'm heavy as well, but I haven't experienced it being that bad.
Okay.
But I know people who have, had trouble with that. They've been talking about changing the rear suspension.
They've been talking about changing the rear suspension. To what?
That is something which they're still figuring out. They need to, sort of look into the market as well, which is the right one for them right now. So they're trying to, the conversations are recent because the bike has just been here, right? Like it's not something.
Any conversations around the Honda WhatsApp group?
Yeah, quite a bit, right? Around like, there are a couple of them who are talking about changing the rear suspension, but to what is still a question mark.
But what is still a question mark?
It's a clear question.
It's a mystery that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out what will work best for them. So it's something
right.
Like that.
So the next question I want to ask you here is, so what are the different modes available on the Transalp?
Okay, so there is a
riding modes.
Yeah,
there's a sport mode, which I am aware of.
Yeah. There's a standard mode,
okay,
which is my preferred mode right now. Like I feel that's the most adequate mode for me when I'm riding mostly.
Right.
Then there's a gravel mode.
Okay.
And then there's a rain mode, which I've never used, even in rains. Right. And then there's a user mode, which is customizable. You can turn off traction control, you can turn off your rear ABS, and then ride as much as you want. The user mode.
The best mode on the bike.
Yeah, I haven't experimented too much on it, I'll be honest. I'm like, I need to get to learn a lot on that side. But for me, the most preferred mode on the bike has been standard. And I feel that it's got adequate, like the bike can do 160, 170 kilometers on that, like as a breeze. And even if you're going off-road, it'll push the bike easily. Right. You don't feel much on it.
Okay. What have you accessorized? How have you made it more?
Here's another thing about the bike, the accessories are expensive. Right? Like, let's put it that way, it's very clear.
Okay.
So if you want the crash guard and the bash plate setup from Honda, it'll cost you 1,20,000.
Wow.
Okay.
So that's steep.
So I didn't get it from there.
Okay.
Right. So then I got it through Moto Usher. I ordered a Hepcon Becker crash guard and bash plate setup. That costed, again, it is still expensive. It's about 80,000 bucks if you want a set.
Still you're saving some money.
40,000 bucks approx, right? And if you want the SW Motec version of it, you get it for 50,000, but that's been giving trouble to a lot of bikes. They aren't great. Right? But I really like the setup on the Hepcon Becker. You got an upper, a lower crash guard, and a bash plate.
Okay.
And they do a really good job. Like I did drop my bike in Ladakh, I'll be honest, and no problems at all. I don't even have a scratch on the bike right now.
Oh, lovely.
So that's something. I mean, spending on 80,000 bucks, these are the moments you realize that, this is totally worth it.
Totally worth it.
Right? So then I have a Givi tall windscreen, which is a smoked windscreen. That is just to ensure that, when I'm touring on highways, the wind blast can be controlled, of course, right? The stock windscreen is not
I actually wanted to get to that.
Yeah.
The stock windscreen, do you feel it was sufficient when you bought the bike?
So here's another thing. So when I got the bike, I ensured I got my accessories before the bike. Okay, because I was saying I had no clarity on when I was going to get the bike, so I ordered all my accessories. Okay, right, and they arrived. The windscreen arrived before, the crash guards arrived before. So I gave the accessories to the Honda Big Wing showroom, and then fix it all and give it to me. So I do not really have an experience of riding the short windscreen or the stock windscreen for long, but I did try my friend's bike, and there is a massive difference. Like on highways, it's very evident. Wind blast? Yeah, there is that. He was riding a Duke, for him it's okay. Okay. But because I was riding a TRK, and you're pretty much secure behind it, right? Like,
yep, absolutely.
The stock windscreen on a TRK is really
That's brilliant.
Good,
that's huge as well as it's brilliant.
Yeah, so I wanted that same experience here when it came to wind protection. It's not to that level, even with the Givi, I'll be honest, but it does a great job.
It does a great job.
It does a great job, yeah.
City conditions. How does the Transalp perform?
So there are two aspects to it again. I'll put it this way. If you look at how nimble the bike is, you can easily get it through traffic. It's a big bike. I've had no trouble. You can easily just glide through traffic.
What about the heat between the legs?
That's what I was coming to. It heats up a lot, right? So it cooks up. Let's put it that way, right? And there have been instances where even the pillion could feel the heat.
Okay.
Because we were just, crawling through traffic because there was no way even a bike could get through, and those situations can get really bad. So I wouldn't say if it's a situation where there's bumper to bumper traffic, please keep the bike at home. Don't take it out. But if you feel it's a day where the traffic could be moving and stuff, this bike can get through. There's no trouble. Though it's like a big capacity bike, it's extremely nimble. That's the unique aspect of this bike. That's something I like.
So don't never wear shorts when you ride the
bike. Oh, no way. There is no way I'm getting there.
The next one which I wanted to get into, I want you to go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the tires of the bike.
Okay, so
the stock tires.
Stock tires are, so they give two options. They don't give you an option, but the black ones come with the Dunlop and the white models come with the Mazzella Karus. I have the Karus, they've been doing great right now.
Okay.
I haven't experienced anything where I felt that, hey, this tire isn't adequate to handle the terrain, right? Even if it's been rain, tarmac, off-road, it's been sailing through. Okay.
So you're already, you mentioned earlier that you're done with close to about 10,000 kilometers on your bike.
A little more than 10,000.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
Are you going to be changing the tires anytime soon?
No, it seems like it's got some more life left in it. So
give me
I think it can at least do another 5,000 kilometers.
Another 5,000?
At least.
So
it looks good for that.
Looks good for another 5,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
Lovely. Mileage.
So interesting. It's doing a good job. Let's put it that way. Right.
City and highway.
City, I'm getting about 20, 21.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
On the highways, it depends. If I'm doing solo, I get 20.
Okay.
Right? If I'm doing it with a group, I get 24, 25. In Ladakh, I was getting 28. Right. I'll put it that way. I have an image. I think I'll share it to you. You guys can put it on the screen if required. Basically, it does a pretty good job. It doesn't give you a range. The bike doesn't give you a range.
All right.
It'll actually calculate the mileage in a way where what's the number of kilometers you've done, how much petrol you've consumed, and what's your current mileage. So it'll give you that data on the screen. Right. So it actually, you can really correlate and just check if it's actually true or no as well.
Right.
So, and it does it tank to tank. So I have an image of that where it shows. So you guys can maybe put it's 28.1 or something like that, right, in Ladakh. So that's what I got.
Do you feel that it's the tank capacity is sufficient enough for touring?
Yeah. I think 17 liters approx is what it gives. 16.9 is what they claim. So 16, let's keep it that way, 16.9, right? And I would say I've done like close to 400 kilometers on a tank. So when I'm doing with groups. So I would say that's a decent range if you're looking at, refueling stops as well.
So have you experienced any kind of recalls on these particular bikes as far as Transalp was concerned?
Not on the Transalp. I think the European market had an issue with the center stand.
Yep.
I don't have a center stand. So
no problem. Resolve. No problem. Let's get it out. We don't want the problem.
Yeah. So I'm fine there, right? So no, I haven't heard of anything else other than that. Center stands have had issues as far as I know.
What was the issue with the center stand?
I am not too sure on the exact details, but I think the Honda center stand, which cost like $20,000 in India, were having issues.
Honda, your prices have to come down.
So I think they were not stable enough or something. I don't know what the exact issue was. But they were recalling all the center stands alone.
Okay.
Right. So that was the only thing I've heard till date. But I'm not sure if many of them actually got the center stands in India because of being that expensive.
So, going a little bit further, since we were talking about your tires, I want to know the next thing about the braking.
Okay. So, on road, my experience has been fantastic. I'll say that because there have been instances where I'm like cruising at maybe like 140s, and I see a cow a little ahead. But in general, I also tend to engine brake a lot. So that's been my tendency. That's why my brake pads tend to last longer. And the bike stopped when it needed to stop. Like, I'll put it that way. It's as simple as that, right? Like, caused no trouble to anyone. The cow walked off. I was safe, and I think I did a decent job that way.
Right? I think
even at high speeds, like it can come down. If you're at 140, assume.
Okay.
You hit the brake.
It responds very well.
It responds, and you can come down to like 60, 30, 40 very, very quickly.
Okay.
So it just hits you down very quickly. So that's been great for me.
You've done about 10,000 kilometers. What are your thoughts on the bike? Overall, if I had to ask you to rate it between 1 to 5, owning it for the last couple of months and doing about 10,000 kilometers, what would your rating be when you initially started on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
And after owning it for riding it for about 10,000 kilometers, what is your rating now?
So, as I said, I got this bike in Feb, right? It's been about 5 months now. The perception I had back then hasn't changed till date, right?
Okay.
So, the reason why I got the bike initially was because I really connected with the bike and I really enjoyed, riding it, right? Like when I got it for the first time. And for me, the first 2 weeks was about getting used to that power delivery, because this was a much more, like my previous bike was 46 bhp, this is 91. So there was a startling difference, and the torque figures are also much higher, right?
Yep.
So for me, initially it was more about getting used to that power delivery and how the throttle response is, right? So at that point in time, I felt, okay, this is a little overwhelming for me.
Okay.
Right. So that was my first thing.
Okay.
But if you look at the once I got used to it, the fun I had when I was like 2 weeks into the bike, the fun I'm having right now, I would give it like, a good 5 on 5 if I had to give, right? Like, but that'll be like too much of a bias, I would say. If I had to be a real critic here, I'll give it a 4, because I would have loved my tubeless tires. So, on the bike to have tubeless tires for sure. So that's the only thing which is lacking as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Like if the bike if I had to call out something, then I had to spend some extra buck to get it converted, and my rear tires are now filled with outtakes, and
Okay.
I've done a decent job. It didn't work on the front tires because the tires are tube tires, so I need to change the tires as well. So whenever I do change the tires, the front will also become tubeless.
Oh, lovely.
So
yeah. You were talking about a bit of performance.
Yeah.
I want to know a few things. Power delivery.
Yeah.
And I want to know how's the engine performance. And one thing which we all want to hear about is the exhaust note.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
I personally really like the exhaust note on the bike.
Okay.
And let's start there.
Grunty?
It is grunty.
Okay.
It's got a good pop as well when you slow down.
Okay.
Right. So you do get to experience that.
Okay.
So that sounds really nice. Exhaust, it's not overly loud as well.
Okay.
So your presence is
So it's
felt.
mellow. It's very mellow.
Yeah. Your presence is felt.
Okay.
But when you are, on the highways, you're not heard by a lot of people in general. So in a way, it's nice.
So it's like, if I had to put it out in terms of music analogy, it's like going from alternative rock to heavy metal all of a sudden.
Yeah. So it's sort of that way, right? So, but if you look at the throttle response on the modes, like they have different settings, right? On sport, standard, and everything. So they don't play around with the BHP. It's basically the throttle response which plays around with, right? So one thing I've realized on this bike is, like, before you realize, the bike is at really high speeds.
Okay.
Right, like if it's an open highway and you just open your throttle, if you don't look at the odo, you will not know what speed you're at. So on that open highway, we touched 200 before we realized.
What's the top on this bike? What's the top?
It can do 200 plus. I haven't really checked. The specs would say slightly above 200.
Okay.
Right. I'm not sure of the exact number, but it can easily do 200 on sport.
And how is the vibrations on the highway when you're touching such high speeds?
I haven't really experienced
any form of vibration.
There are vibes. I'll be honest. Like especially before the first service, there were a few vibes and stuff. But once the oil change happened, the vibes drastically reduced.
What speed do you normally tend to feel the vibes?
So it's not about speed. So if you're riding consistently between 3 to 4,000 RPM, there are vibes even now.
Okay.
Right. So that range is sort of the transitioning phase for the RPM.
Yeah.
There you will face some sort of vibes. Right?
Okay.
But if you're doing high speeds, you don't feel much. Like there's barely anything. Like you would have some vibes on the handlebar and your foot pegs, but that is it. Like that's.
Is it noticeable or is it negligible?
Negligible. I would put it that way. It's nothing. I mean, again, comparing to my previous bikes, like this is like a sail through for me. I mean, I started off with the Royal Enfield, so you can imagine what was it back then, right? So.
I hope you're not a Royal Enfield hater.
No, I'm not a hater at all. I started there, right? So.
Vivek, listen.
So I started there.
You were trying to pressurize him into saying that he's not a hater.
No, I don't hate the motorcycle. I'll be honest. Right? So
listen.
Yeah. I mean, there are vibes, but they are very negligible. Okay. So I don't think there's anything substantial that will trouble you while riding.
Okay.
Right. So
how user friendly is the instrument cluster? Do you feel very? Is it overloaded or is it very user friendly? Or do you feel that they could have done better? So
it's actually quite simple.
Okay.
Right? Even if you look at the switch gear on the sides, they're just giving you one thing like a joystick, right? That controls everything on the screen.
Okay.
So you just switch left, right, up, down, and that's all you need to do. You can get through different toggles on the screen.
Okay.
Right? You just want to select something, just long press the up button.
Okay.
So it's quite simple. You don't have too many switches for you to, like the old Africa Twin, for example, had a lot of switch gear, right? Like you don't experience that. There's just one joystick kind of a thing where you just need to fiddle around.
Quite user friendly.
Quite user friendly. You can customize the info you want on your screen, and you can basically see what you want to see, right? And you can get rid of the rest. You can put it that way. So I think it gives you adequate information. One, a lot of them are saying like, why doesn't it give range? But I feel in a way it's good that it doesn't give range, because most bikes give range in a way it's not accurate at all, right? So
True.
So rather it gives you the information which I said earlier, wherein it gives you like what's your consumption, what's the number of liters how many kilometers have you done, how many liters have you consumed for that, and what's your mileage. So logically you will understand how much your bike can run in general. So that's something it gives.
So while you're touring, I want to know a little bit more. How does it handle the luggages with the panniers and with all your luggages on the bike? How does the bike handle?
So I've moved to this person who relies on soft luggage.
Okay.
Right. So
you normally tend to use soft luggage?
So it was an aspirational thing for me to get panniers and top box. Right. So all my previous bikes, including the TRK and the 310 GS had a top box.
Okay.
I had saddlebags on the 310 GS, and then once I got a TRK, it was like, I got a custom made set of panniers from so there is this brand in Coimbatore who custom makes a few of these panniers, and I got it from there.
Okay.
I had fun on it, and then realized that it's already a heavy bike and it's adding more load, and if you have a fall, it can take a pretty big dent, right? And I also learned to pack lesser on longer rides. So I did the entire 2-week long Ladakh trip on a tailbag this time. Like I had a Rhinox Navigator tailbag.
Okay.
And then I had a small Carbonado mod pack on top, which had all the tools and stuff.
Okay.
Right, but all my clothing and everything just went into the tailbag. So my entire trip. So most of my long trips, even if it's like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I'm confident I can do it in the same setup. But in general, you'll never feel the weight of the bike. Like it's that well. Even if another advantage, like I think this is a point you need to add. If you drop your bike, it's very easy to pick it up back. Because
it's not that heavy?
You don't feel the weight even while picking it up. Like at least from my experience, because I was lifting a 250 kilo bike before this, right? Like a TRK if I have a fall. This one, you just need to hold the handlebar and you lift up. So it's quite simple.
So it's, if I have to talk about the weight of this particular bike, so it's very, anybody can go ahead and manage this weight?
Let's put actual numbers. So the dry weight of the bike is about 190 kilos.
190 kilos.
Right? It's not that heavy in terms of a 750cc motorcycle.
Right.
Right? If you look at, again, a TRK was 235 dry.
Yep.
So that's, again, a big difference that you see.
Okay.
But even if you add in fuel and oil and everything, it's about 208 kilos. So it's actually quite light in comparison to the other bikes in the market, right? So you can, personally, I could just lift it up by holding onto my buckbusters and just lifting it up from there, right? I think I have a video, I can share it to you all as well, of me actually
that would be great.
Up. Yeah. There is a puddle where the bike fell and I had to lift it up. This was in Badra Tiger Reserve. So I have a video. I'll try and share it to you all. So there is it's quite easy. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Lift it up.
Moving on, one question which every bike owner wants to know here is, how easy is it to source parts for your Transalp?
Okay, so I think Honda is doing a good job in, the post-sales experience or the service experience has been fantastic with Honda.
Okay.
Right? Like for example, a friend of mine actually wanted a clip within the calipers, which holds on to your brake pads, right? That's not a easy moving part.
Correct.
They had stock.
They had stock of that.
Right.
Okay.
There is a well nut which goes behind the the windscreen or the visor.
Okay.
Right. It's a small part which is again not fast moving. Right. Like they had that in stock. For me, I changed this yesterday because in my Transit I had to remove the windshield. Okay. Right. And every time you remove the windshield, the well nut is kind of thing where it's a single use product. So if you remove it, it gets ripped off. Okay. It's a small rubber material which the bolt sits onto. They had stock for that as well. Right, and so there hasn't been too many complaints on the bike thus far that I've heard where they had to actually change maybe a fairing or the tank as such. Maybe those would take time because it needs to come from Japan because it's a CBO unit. Right. That could take maybe 2 to 4 weeks at times. Okay. But we haven't had an instance where that needs at this point in time. So But if the smallest of parts are definitely available, I think it's also a thing with Honda. Right, a lot of parts are interchangeable between bikes.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's an
advantage.
The
best part about Honda.
Yeah. So that's another cool aspect of the bike which I would say that you don't need to worry. Small parts, you'd still get it.
Okay. If there's one thing that you would like to see Honda improve with the Transalp in the future, what would be that one suggestion?
Please get tubeless rims at cheaper costs. One of my friends have actually got his rear tubeless, spoke wheels changed to an Africa Twin, and he's paid about $60,000 for it, just for the rear. Right, and I thought, okay, let me take the Outex option because I'd done it also on the TRK, and that costed me $16,000.
Does it void your warranty or anyway?
No.
Okay.
no. I mean, it's the rims end of the day. I don't think that's anyways considered under warranty.
But some of these bike manufacturers have this strict law against using aftermarket parts with your bikes, as well as doing something which is not part of the bike.
Honda just has one rule. Like if you want, like for example, if you want to install the aux lamps, get whatever aux lamps you want. They'll fix it for you.
Okay.
Right, like you get it done from outside and something goes wrong, maybe Honda can screw up your warranty after that.
Okay.
Right, but in this instance, as long as they are doing it and they actually bill you for it, like I think there won't be much trouble with that.
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So I want to know a little bit more about, are you satisfied with the materials used on the bike? Like, do you feel that the build quality is apt enough for the Indian road?
Yeah, I don't see any issues with that aspect as well. I think I haven't felt where any of my parts are actually wobbling or thus far, and I've done enough off-road and on-road, I would say, like in terms of in the first 10,000 kilometers, whatever experience you could have. I haven't experienced, like initially when I installed the crash bars and stuff, I felt those weren't tight enough.
Okay.
After the Patla Bata stretch which I did, they were vibrating a bit, so I had to get those tightened. But that was the only thing. But it was more to do with the crash bars and how they were installed, right? But if you look at the fairings or anything, if you do an intense off-road, I know a few bikes that could have had a bit of a rumbling from somewhere around the tank and the fairings. Never experienced it. It's been solid.
One downside about this bike, which you feel is a downer for you as far as this bike is concerned.
I mean, I'll come back to this again, the tubeless rims.
Apart from the tubeless rims, one more downer.
Yeah, the rear suspension should be the other thing, but I haven't had too much of an issue with it. Okay. Only when it's really bumpy is a thing where the rear suspension was a thing for me.
Okay.
But otherwise, I've personally not felt it as much.
Okay.
Right.
So I have a couple of quick questions here, which I want to ask you. What are your thoughts on the Transalp? If I have to go ahead and ask you, Transalp versus Tiger 850.
Am I allowed to say this? Like,
absolutely, go for it.
Okay. So I have a couple of friends who own a Tiger.
Okay.
Right. And one is a 900 Rally Pro.
Okay.
And I know someone else who owns a 850 Sport as well. Right. And he traveled to Vijayawada to get the service done. If this is a very specific scenario, if you're in Bangalore.
Okay.
Right. So the 850 guy traveled recently to Vijayawada just to get his service done.
Okay.
The 900 owner just goes to Chennai to get his service done.
Okay.
Because there are genuine service issues. I don't want to call names here, but there are genuine services. Reliability is not a thing, but I think it's more to do with how Bangalore service centers are handled. Right. Honda, on the other hand, I think that is one major factor. Like while considering bigger bikes, I know a couple of them on my group as well who want to buy bigger bikes, but just holding back from a Tiger just because of this factor that, hey, if I do travel, like if I do a ride just to get my service done, like I don't think that's ideal for me. Right. A lot of that issue is there. But in general, Honda service. One thing which Honda can do a little better is they just have one service center right now for your top line bikes, right?
The
which
big
is
wing.
Which is close to Kengeri, right? So and they also accept the regular big wing bikes there as well, your 350s and others. So it kind of tends to get a little crowded, but they definitely do a good job there.
So you have very well trained mechanics as well as service.
Yeah, definitely. I don't doubt their expertise on the bike.
Okay.
Like even the service manager or the person who does the service, right? I think you can openly just go and have a conversation about them, and they don't push. Like for example, I told you earlier as well, right? They don't push you to do a service unnecessarily.
Okay.
I've had experiences in my, with my previous bikes where they're, you're at Ladakh, why don't you do a service? I think it's necessary for the bike.
Okay.
And here they're like, you know what? Complete the tenure. It's okay. The bike will do its job.
Okay.
Right. So that's a sort of confidence even they have on the machine. Along with how you feel in the machine as well, right? So I think service experience that way has been fantastic. Post sales, I have no issues with Honda whatsoever.
Transalp versus V-Strom 800D. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so I haven't personally ridden a 800D before.
Okay.
And none of my close friends or any of them in my group have an 800D, so may not be the best person to answer this question. But I think the only thing that I've heard of as a difference is probably the weight comparison.
Okay.
The 800D is a much more heavier motorcycle maybe.
Okay.
But otherwise I'm not too sure if I think the right way to answer that question would be after riding one.
Okay.
Right. So I don't think I'm the right person for that.
Before we close our podcast for the day, I want to ask you one thing you absolutely adore about your Transalp.
Okay.
And do you feel it's an arranged marriage or a love marriage with the Transalp?
I mean, I don't know how to describe that aspect, right? I think Pranav arranged it for me at some point in time, maybe because I had no plans of buying one, as I said, right? Just felt connected to the motorcycle straight away.
You fell in first. You
Yeah,
fell in
love
love
at first sight, maybe you can
with
put
an
that-
arranged marriage.
Yeah, it's sort of that. But you know, the one thing I really love about it is the fact that I don't have to worry about anything while taking on a terrain, right? Like,
Right.
so with my previous motorcycles where I've had a few glitches or hiccups here and there, I was always concerned when I went off road, maybe.
Okay.
Right, and on this motorcycle, I don't have to think twice. That's my first thing.
Okay.
Another very important aspect, I think we didn't talk about it at all, is that you can take a U-turn or you can just flip your bike around without thinking twice. Again, just stay there. You want to take a turn, you can just turn the bike right.
So the turning radius
is
amazing,
fantastic.
Fantastic.
Right, and you don't feel the weight while turning. That's the thing.
Okay.
So again, it comes down to the balance of the bike, and of course, being a lighter machine, right. So you can just turn the motorcycle wherever you are at. Like, you don't have to worry much.
So
It's
you
quite
can
simple.
literally treat it like a city bike.
You could, except for the heating issues, right? So that's what I think. It's very nimble.
Okay.
I think that's what strikes for a 750cc big machine with all the power that it generates, right? It's extremely nimble for that.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, Abhijitt. We'll go ahead and find you your date, which we tricked you out of. Once again, please like, share and subscribe. And if you have any questions for Abhijitt, you can drop it in the comments section. He'd be more than happy to answer. I've even dropped his Insta link in the description below. Thank you again. See you all.
Thank you so much.